Ahoy! Yesterday I talked about the one positive thing about New World Season 7. Today it's time to talk about the downsides and also my future plans for New World and beyond New World. Now, when Season 7 was announced, I was excited for the PvP servers, the opportunity to test the OPR map. I was also skeptical what would be happening beyond that, because obviously outside of those servers it wasn't really much content, but the PvP servers sounded fun enough for me to be excited about that. Things played out very different in reality. My expectation was very roughly this. The season would last for 3 months, I would probably have fun for a month, maybe a little bit more, on the PvP servers while everyone is playing, while it's fresh, while it's fun, while there's a lot going on. And then after the hype dies down a little bit, we would get the OPR test, and if we were lucky, would maybe get another test or two, or maybe even a release of the OPR map at some point later in the season after it's been tested. If we were really lucky. That was obviously some degree of copium, but anyways, that was what I was thinking would roughly happen, and then after that, maybe there would be something to do with the new mutations, or maybe something to kill a little bit of time. At that point, there would have been roughly 1.5 months left, which wouldn't have been too terrible. Now let's contrast that with what actually happened. The PvP servers went live, and they were underpopulated in AP from the start. I looked at the trading post today, and you can see the number of trades here. We have got 57 pages of trades in the PvP server, whereas the other servers have somewhere between 280 to 500 trades roughly, which is for 3 separate servers. So based on the trades, the PvP server has a population of 1/10 of the biggest server in the region, which is still a small, low population server. So very, very low population server. I know trade doesn't mean everything, especially on the PvP server, people will trade a little less, but overall you can get an average idea of the numbers here, and it's basically hitting every server in the region right now, with all of them being underpopulated separately. So not the best metrics to measure that here, but the best that is available to us. The PvP server also currently has a total of 3 territories owned, so yeah, make of that what you will. Following this release, we had the server bug that allowed people to transfer freely between the servers. I've made plenty of videos on that. All I will say at this point is I was banned for nearly 2 weeks. If you agree or disagree with that, is whatever. For a relatively minor offense here, meaning I didn't play New World. When I came back, PvP servers, not really something that was worth considering anymore. Because again, the population in this region was already small beforehand, the hype was gone, the new artifacts were tested by other people, and a lot of people were also simply banned, reducing the overall player base. So back to the main servers everyone went. And then New World made the relatively odd decision to drop the Outpost Rush map right after that for that weekend. This could be a positive in some ways, because it could mean that they wanted to test the map as early as possible, to have as much time as possible to work on the map until it's released. Fair enough. But the downside is that in terms of the content for the season, it puts everything even closer together, and there's even less to do afterwards, unless PvP servers are still very active in your region. And now for the most part, content for the season is just kind of over, except for some seasonal events. And that's within less of a month since the season launch. What makes this exponentially worse is that this is not a 3-month season. They seem to have gone for some in-between thing where it's not quite 4 months, but almost 4 months, and we are still 81 days away from the next season. That's assuming the season pass number is correct. That is a significantly longer wait, and I'm expecting a lot of people to either take a break or outright quit at this point. And that is with us already being at the lowest player count on Steam we ever had following an expansion in January specifically, though we do have console players now, which we can't measure, but my impression is that there aren't that many of them left. What makes the current situation worse is the uncertainty about what's coming afterwards, because we only have this living roadmap which doesn't really tell us anything about what is planned for the season that will follow Season 7, so we don't actually know if there's going to be much content at all. We can probably expect the Outpost Rush map, but beyond that, who knows? Anything that's listed as in development can come in Season 8, or it can come later. I think we're going to get some sort of expansion-ish deal towards the end of the year, but the specifics, again, are completely unclear. Could be something like Brimstone. We know that they want to do something with Reekwater, but beyond that, we don't really know anything for sure. In short, we have no concrete information about the future and nothing to do in the game right now. Not exactly a great perspective. For me, this means I will be splitting my attention and looking at other games as well. I still have a few New World videos lined up that I want to do, and if there are things worth talking about in New World, like for example a new season, the new OPR map and so on, I will talk about them, but I won't purely focus on New World when there's nothing happening in New World. There are quite a few games coming out this year that might be of interest for me and maybe for you as well that I might talk about in a separate video. Today I want to focus on one game in particular, and that is Dune Awakening. Dune Awakening sits somewhere between a survival game and an MMO and is made by the developers of Conan Exiles. It has both melee and range combat with certain balance mechanics between them that sometimes somewhat force you into closer range fights. The setting is obviously in the Dune universe, so think a bit more futuristic and very deserty. It is not necessarily everyone's cup of tea, I'm well aware of that, because the theme itself is not interesting for everyone, but I think the overall format is something that could be appealing for New World players with this mix of melee and ranged, with this somewhat MMO-ish scale, and with the somewhat harsher survival requirements, which maybe resemble early New World a little bit more. There's quite a bit of footage from a press event going around, and while I think that there's absolutely work to be done in certain places here, it looks interesting enough for me to give it at least some attention and talk about it a little bit. I'm not jumping into this with overly inflated expectations or super hyped. I'm very cautious with anything being released these days because there's a good chance that especially the early releases may end up rocky. That is just very common nowadays. So very, very cautious in the regard. Also, given that the developer is known for a certain degree of jankiness in their games. But I think it's not for the worst if I go into it with somewhat more muted expectations and just see how it is. There are of course various components as to where this game needs to be good in order for me to enjoy it long term when it comes to the combat, the survival mechanics, housing, which seems relatively cool so far, performance and all that. So very much a let's see what happens kind of deal. But I think when it comes to gaming in 2025, that is generally the expectation. And for some aspects, especially the endgame, we won't really find out until release anyways. And while there are other games worth talking about, a lot of them are also still quite a fair bit away. They are more towards the end of the year, whereas with Dune, we might have a chance that it comes earlier. Update from the future. When I was recording this, we didn't know the release date yet, but it's now announced for May 20th of this year. So relatively close, not too long of a wait. Definitely something worth keeping a close eye on at this point. But I also have to be realistic beyond that. If all of that doesn't work out and none of those games catch on or take forever to come out, I might have to go into some other field of work and I may not be able to make YouTube videos anymore if I'm working full-time somewhere else. I'm hoping it doesn't come to that, but who knows what the future holds. For now, thanks for watching. Twitch.tv/DukeSloth if you want to catch me live, and patreon.com/DukeSloth if you'd like to support me further. Thanks to all of my patrons who already do exactly that, and thank you for watching. Duke Sloth, out.